In this moment, allow yourself to sit still for a while, before the day keeps moving forward, before your thoughts pull you too far away. Within the rhythm you already know, something quietly begins to shift, not strong, not rushed. Just a subtle softening inside, like the light at the end of the day falling a little slower than usual. For many years, the role of keeping balance has made you comfortable standing in the middle, between expectations and personal desires, between understanding others and listening to yourself. Lately, something has been moving beneath the surface. No explanation needed, no name required, just the sense that your breathing feels lighter and your mind holds less tension. This video doesn't offer answers. It's simply a small story, a moment to look back together. And from here, we begin the first part, where change reveals itself very slowly. Libra, there are movements that don't need an introduction. They don't break what already exists. They don't force anyone to get up and chase after them. They arrive quietly, like a morning that hasn't fully named itself yet, when you open the window and notice your breath feels a little deeper than yesterday. Not because the world outside has changed that much, but because something inside you has softened. Just a very small release, yet enough for you to sense that something is shifting. This kind of change rarely comes with clear milestones, no event to mark on a calendar, no moment where you can point and say, "This is it." It doesn't arrive with applause, and it doesn't ask for confirmation. It's more like an underground stream, quiet, persistent, as finding its way through the narrowest spaces, slowly smoothing the edges you've been used to carrying. You may still wake up to the same routine, walk the same streets, talk to the same people, but in very brief moments, waiting at a red light, taking a sip of coffee, pausing between two sentences, you notice you're no longer gripping everything so tightly. Your body understands before your mind does, and this time, your mind is willing to listen. Libra has always been the one keeping the scales from tipping. You learned how to stand in the middle long enough to read a room before speaking, long enough to soften differences so things could pass peacefully. That sensitivity is a gift, but it can also become a burden when it makes you forget what it feels like to rest inside yourself. What's happening now doesn't ask you to lose that sensitivity. It simply invites you to set down the part of the weight, the part you've been carrying on behalf of others for a long time. When you do that, you don't lose who you are. You're just returning that role to where it truly belongs. You may notice you react less, explain less, feel less urgency to clarify everything right away. Instead, there's a pause long enough to ask, does this really need me to balance it? That question doesn't demand an immediate answer. It simply opens space for you to breathe. This new sense of ease doesn't come from everything being resolved. It comes from no longer treating uncertainty as a personal failure. You allow contradictions to exist without rushing to fix them. You allow emotions to pass through without editing them into something more acceptable. In that space, you stop bracing yourself, and when you stop bracing, you feel less tired. Lately, life may be moving at a slower pace, not because you lack motivation, but because you're listening. You choose to walk fully present in each step, instead of running just to arrive. Light doesn't need to be turned all the way up to prove anything. A small lamp is enough to see the path. If you're searching for a clear sign that you're heading in the right direction, you may not find it right away. But there are quieter signs. Deeper sleep, relaxed shoulders, conversations that feel lighter. These small details don't promise anything grand. They simply remind you that your body and your mind are beginning to stand on the same side. And perhaps the most meaningful shift isn't in the answers, but in the questions themselves. Instead of urgently asking when everything will finally be okay, you begin to ask whether you've been kind enough to yourself. That question doesn't need to be right or wrong. It only needs to be held gently, like a small flame, warm and steady. At this point in the story, there is no conclusion, only a very soft invitation to keep observing, to slow down one more beat, to watch how change unfolds when no one is pushing. And from that quiet space, we move into the next part, where the role of keeping the peace is seen through a different lens. Libra has always been used to standing in the middle, between right and wrong, between your own emotions and the emotions of others. between personal desires and expectations that have rested on your shoulders for a very long time. That position requires sensitivity, the ability to listen, to measure, to consider. You read a room faster than most. You know when to speak and when to step back. That skill keeps things calm, but the cost is rarely mentioned. Your energy slowly drains each time you hold yourself back. You've spent years keeping the surface smooth, not because you fear conflict, but because you believed harmony was the best way for everyone to keep moving forward. And then, in rare quiet moments, when the lights are off, when the conversation has ended, a simple question appears. What about me? No blame, no resentment. Just an honest wondering. What's changing now doesn't ask you to choose sides. It doesn't push you to become harder. And it doesn't pull you into confrontation. The invitation is much simpler, to set down part of the responsibility of keeping everyone satisfied. When you do that, the world doesn't fall apart. The relationships that truly need you remain, and whatever feels unstable reveals itself on its own. Along the way, a realization becomes clearer. Silence isn't always peace, and compromise isn't always love. Often, they're just the quickest way to avoid discomfort. And discomfort, when faced honestly, can become a reliable guide. You begin to say, "Let me think about it," instead of nodding just to move on. You allow conversations to pause instead of forcing them to feel complete. You let empty spaces exist. At first, those spaces surprise others. Then they adjust. And you notice, boundaries don't break connection. They give connection a clearer shape. Another subtle shift appears in how you listen to yourself. Before, your instinct was to place other people's feelings first, as if it were your natural responsibility. Now, you take a moment to ask, what is this feeling telling me? The question doesn't need a perfect answer. It only needs to be asked. And just asking it changes the direction of your energy. In close relationships, a genuine lightness begins to appear. Not because everyone suddenly agrees more, but because you're no longer the one patching every crack. When each person carries their own part, the shared picture becomes less distorted. You stay in the conversation, but not in the middle like a cushion. You are simply you, clear, present, without needing to soften every edge. This easing doesn't make you distant. It brings you closer to what's real. You smile when you feel joy. You stay quiet when you need to. You leave earlier when your energy runs low. These small choices don't need announcements. They speak for you. A lesson emerges through experience. Lasting harmony is never created by one person carrying everything. It forms when each person takes responsibility for their own part. When you stop mediating everything, you allow others to grow in how they face difference. And in this new role, you feel lighter. Oddly enough, this relief isn't loud or dramatic. It's like setting a backpack down after a long walk. Your shoulders drop. Your back straightens. Your breathing finds its rhythm again. No one applauds that moment, but your body knows. At the end of this part, there's no final conclusion, and just one quiet recognition. You haven't abandoned Libra's sensitivity. You've simply stopped sacrificing it where it isn't needed. From this new place, the story keeps opening, into a rhythm that's slower but more real, where you begin walking in a way that finally feels like your own. After setting down the role of keeping the peace, something subtle begins to appear. Your rhythm changes, not because you've lost motivation, and not because you've turned away from your ambitions. It's simply that your steps are no longer pulled by the pressure to move faster than everyone else. You slow down, and what matters is this. You are fully present in each step. Before, movement was often tied to goals, clear destinations, speed measured by results. Now, movement takes a different shape. It feels like a morning without a harsh alarm clock. You still wake up. But you're not being pushed. Time opens wide enough for you to notice your feet touching the floor, your breath filling your lungs, and your first thought is no longer what you need to do, but where you are. In this slower rhythm, your ears begin to hear what was once overlooked. Not the noise of the world, but your inner voice, quiet, patient, often drowned out by a packed schedule. You begin to tell the difference between true desire and the habit of pleasing others. These two used to blend so seamlessly that you believed they were the same. Now, the boundary appears, not sharp, just clear enough that you no longer confuse the two. This new clarity doesn't lead to dramatic decisions. It arrives through small choices. You choose to end a day earlier. You choose not to reply to a message right away. You choose silence to reflect, instead of speaking just to finish the conversation. These choices don't require long explanations. They create space. And inside that space, you breathe. Here's an image that may help you feel it. Before, the room needed bright lights to prove that everything was okay. Now, a small lamp is enough. The light doesn't perform. It doesn't erase every shadow. It simply shows the path, just enough for you to move forward without stumbling. When there's nothing to prove, your energy returns to where it belongs. Moving more slowly also changes how you see success. Instead of measuring how much you complete, you begin to value how long you stay. Staying with a conversation, staying with an unnamed emotion, staying with your body when it signals fatigue. These moments don't make headlines, but they build the foundation. And when the foundation is solid, the structure can stand. Something else happens quietly. The inner battle begins to settle, not because conflict disappears, but because you no longer treat it as an enemy. When you stop fighting yourself, the energy once drained returns. You use it to care, to learn, to create at your own rhythm. And that's enough to make a day feel complete. In very ordinary moments, packing your bag, waiting for an elevator, watching evening light touch the wall, you realize you don't need to run to prove you're living well. A good life doesn't need a loudspeaker. It shows up in a steady heartbeat, in eyes that don't avoid contact, in the wisdom to stop at the right moment. Moving slowly doesn't place you on the sidelines. It brings you into the center of the experience. You still take action, but it's intentional. You still move forward, but you don't abandon your body along the way. And when there's a moment to speed up, you do it from a grounded place, not from panic. If there's a lesson unfolding here, it may be this simple truth. Authenticity isn't loud. It doesn't need an audience. It needs presence. You show up for your choices, your limits, your capacity, as they are today. Tomorrow will arrive on its own, but today needs you here. At the end of this part, there's no advice on how to live, just one quiet recognition to carry with you. Slowing down doesn't make you fall behind. It helps you touch the ground. And from that ground, the next step becomes steadier. The flow continues, leading us into the next part, where relationships begin to breathe in a new way. I think when your pace slows and you become more present with yourself, your relationships begin to change their rhythm too. The shift is subtle. No one disappears overnight. Conversations aren't forced to turn in a new direction. It's just that the atmosphere feels lighter, less tension, less measuring every word. You start to notice that you no longer need to manage your image for an interaction to flow. No need to adjust your tone to be pleasing. No need to arrange your emotions to fit a role. When you set down the need to satisfy everyone, conversations find their own breath. There are pauses, there are unfinished sentences. And strangely enough, it's that incompleteness that creates a sense of safety. Some people slowly drift farther away. No long explanations, no arguments. Just two rhythms that no longer move at the same speed. Before, at that distance might have hurt, because you were used to keeping people close through understanding and compromise. Now it feels different. You see distance as a natural movement. Not right, not wrong, just enough. That sense of enough doesn't mean indifference. It comes from respecting what's actually happening. When a relationship no longer requires effort just to stay alive, you don't see it as failure. You see it as information, a signal to reset your energy and return it to where it's received. And then there are people who stay, but in a new way. No need for you to explain who you are. No need to prove that you're okay. They meet you as you are, on strong days, on tired days, and in moments of silence. Their presence doesn't require you to become the most agreeable version of yourself. You only need to be you. Within these relationships, expectations begin to adjust. There's no longer an unspoken assumption that you'll always be the one to give in, or that you'll stand in the middle to smooth things over. When the old role is released, a different kind of connection appears. A connection built on clarity, clear boundaries, clear needs, clear awareness of what's possible right now. You may hear yourself say, "I need more time," without attaching a long apology. You may say, "This doesn't work for me," without guilt. These words don't weaken connection. They strengthen the relationships that remain because they're grounded in truth. The peace you feel doesn't come from everyone agreeing. It comes from no longer fighting your own feelings just to keep a bond intact. When the inner struggle ends, you show up more fully. You listen more deeply. You speak less, but with more accuracy. And if it's time to leave, you leave with respect. Another small but important shift is how you see conflict. Before, conflict was something to avoid. Now, it becomes a form of information, not always comfortable, but useful. It shows where adjustment is needed, where a pause is required, or where it's time to move forward. When conflict is seen as information, you're no longer afraid of it. You simply read it. Within your close circle, you feel the warmth of relationships that can breathe. The space is wide enough for each person to carry their own rhythm. No labels, no over-explaining. This closeness feels like a room with open windows. Light entering just enough, air flowing freely, everyone at ease. At the end of this part, there's no conclusion about where every relationship will go. Nay, just one feeling for you to hold on to. When you allow yourself to be yourself, the relationships that fit will find their own way to stay. And what needs to leave will leave without creating an emptiness that can't be filled. The flow continues, carrying us into the next part, where a gentler lesson about balance begins to take shape. After relationships begin to breathe again, a lesson appears very quietly. No one steps forward to explain it. No message is posted on the wall. The lesson arrives through ordinary days, when you notice you're no longer trying to hold everything in a state of being just right. There are things you once held tightly, not because they still fit, but because you believed letting go would mean collapse. Now, experience shows you another possibility. Some things don't need to be held anymore for life to find its own balance again. When your hands open, a void doesn't always appear. Sometimes what appears instead is space, wide enough to breathe. There are also roles that once clung closely to your identity. The one in the middle, the one who smooths things over, the one who understands everything, the one who gives up their share so everything can stay calm. Those roles once brought recognition, but over time, they grew heavy. This lesson doesn't ask you to discard everything. It simply invites a question. Which roles are still necessary, and which ones have already completed their purpose? When the question is asked, you don't rush to answer. You observe. In small situations, a request, an unspoken expectation, a familiar habit, you try not stepping into the old role. You don't react on instinct. You pause for one beat. And in that pause, things become clearer. What comes from choice, and what comes from obligation you assign to yourself. Balance, in this new way, is no longer about dividing everything evenly, not evenly distributing time, emotions, or responsibility to everyone. Balance becomes a precise kind of listening, knowing what you need today, knowing how much you can give without becoming empty, and having the courage to respect that, even when it surprises others. This self-respect isn't loud. It shows up in small but clear decisions. You choose to say, "I need rest," instead of pushing a little further. You choose to keep an evening open instead of filling it with plans. You choose to do less, but to be fully present while doing it. These choices don't require everyone's approval. They require yours. There may be moments when you wonder if you're becoming more selfish. That question is natural, but experience gradually offers a different answer. When you honor your real needs, you give in a way that lasts. Your gentleness doesn't disappear. It's placed in the right place at the right time, and because of that, it doesn't run dry. Along this path, you begin to see the difference between holding and caring. Holding is gripping tightly so nothing changes. Caring is creating conditions for things to grow in their own rhythm. When you move from holding to caring, you stop managing other people's emotions. You become a companion instead. Present, but not controlling. Here's an image that may help you feel it. A scale doesn't need to stay perfectly level to function well. Sometimes it tilts to reveal the true weight. When you allow that tilt, the information becomes clear. You see what's heavier than it needs to be, and you know where to set it down. You don't lose Libra's gentleness while learning this lesson. It's still there. In how you listen, in the care of your words, in your ability to see multiple sides. The difference is this: you no longer use gentleness to hide your own needs. You use it to communicate more honestly. At the end of this part, there's no checklist, no new standard to meet, just one simple feeling to carry with you. When you place gentleness where it belongs, life rearranges itself, not perfectly, but enough. And with that enough, you move forward more lightly, ready for the closing words, where observation becomes a way of living. At this point in the journey, what may matter most isn't how much you've changed. Oh, but how you're looking at that change. Because when things begin to feel easier, a familiar instinct often appears: to name it, to find direction, to speed up, as if ease itself were a signal to move even faster. But this time, the story opens differently. If there's one thing you don't need to do right now, it's rushing to label what's happening. No need to turn it into a conclusion. No need to attach names to emotions or experiences. When you don't name things too quickly, you allow them the space to fully reveal themselves. The kind of observation being invited here isn't analytical. It's more like a soft presence. You're there with your breath, with the feeling in your chest, with thoughts that come and go. You don't need to sort them into good or bad, right or wrong. Those opposites once helped you navigate, but they're not always necessary. Picture an afternoon moment when sunlight touches a cup of tea. The light isn't trying to make the cup more beautiful, and the cup doesn't need to reflect the light perfectly. They simply meet. And in that meeting, there's a sense of fullness that's hard to put into words. Your current experience is like that too. It doesn't ask to be fully understood. It only asks to be felt. When you allow yourself to feel without rushing to explain, Libra's natural sensitivity finds its proper place. You see more layers without being pulled into choosing one as the final truth. In the days ahead, you may find yourself wondering, what should I do next? That question is natural, but the answer doesn't have to arrive right away. Some seasons of life aren't designed for decisions, but for absorption. When you've absorbed enough, the next step becomes clear on its own. What's important to notice is that the ease you're feeling isn't a reward for effort. It's not a sign that everything has been fully arranged. It's simply a state, fragile, beautiful, and just enough to remind you that you're in the right rhythm for this moment. Speeding up now could pull you out of that rhythm. Staying doesn't mean standing still. Staying means allowing this moment to complete itself. It means tasting today fully before thinking about tomorrow. It means recognizing that not every experience needs to be optimized to hold value. Someone around you may ask where you're headed. You don't need a polished answer. You can say you're listening. Listening to your body, listening to your relationships, listening to the rhythm of your life. That isn't avoidance. It's a different kind of wisdom, the wisdom of presence. Libra, the balance you once chased now has a more subtle shape. It's no longer a task to complete. It's an inner sensation, adjusted day by day. When you allow yourself to stay with that sensation, you don't lose direction. You're building it from the ground up. And so, the story closes here, not with a strong conclusion, but with a very gentle invitation. An invitation to slow down, to observe without interfering, to trust that not every moment needs to be understood to be meaningful. If you're still listening, you may have stayed long enough to recognize this. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is not to push. Just be here, a little longer, in the soft light of the afternoon, in a breath that feels just right, in the life that's unfolding in a way that's uniquely yours.